What if I told you that one of the most famous, enduring love stories in American television history didn't begin with a diamond-studded ballroom, a celebrity guest list, or even a proper wedding dress? What if I told you that the wedding you think you know, the glamorous union of daytime television royalty, cost less than a nice dinner for two? Stay with me, because by the end of this story, you may never look at love, money, or marriage the same way again. Kelly Ripa and Mark Consuelos are now household names. Together, they represent decades of stability in an industry known for short-lived romances and long-running scandals. They've raised children, built careers, survived public scrutiny, and grown older in front of America's eyes. From red carpets to morning television, they look like the definition of a carefully planned, perfectly executed life. But here's the twist, the part that almost no one expects. When Kelly Ripa recently revealed how much their wedding really cost, the numbers stopped people cold. Not because it was extravagant, but because it was shockingly, almost rebelliously small. And the deeper you go into why it was so inexpensive, the more powerful the story becomes. Let's rewind the clock. It's the mid-1990s. Kelly Ripa is young, working steadily, but nowhere near the television icon she would one day become. Mark Consuelos is an actor too, handsome, charismatic, ambitious, but not yet famous. They meet on a soap opera set, like so many Hollywood love stories do, but this one doesn't follow the usual script. Their connection is immediate. Electric. The kind of chemistry you don't negotiate with or postpone. The kind that doesn't wait politely while you build savings accounts or consult wedding planners. And that's important because right here is where the first quiet lesson hides. They didn't have time for someday. They had now. At the time, neither Kelly nor Mark had the kind of money that invites success. No sprawling estates. No luxury brands courting them. No publicist arranging glossy wedding exclusives. What they did have was certainty. Certainty about each other. So instead of planning a wedding, they made a decision. They eloped. No orchestra. No cathedral. No guests flying in from across the country. Just two people, a plane ticket, and a destination chosen not for glamour, but for freedom. Las Vegas. Now pause for a moment and picture that. Because this isn't the Vegas of penthouse suites and celebrity residencies. This is mid-90s Vegas. Neon lights, wedding chapels on every corner, a city built on fast decisions and forever promises. They walked into a small chapel. They paid the fee. And years later, decades later, Kelly Ripa revealed the number. The wedding cost them $179. Let that sink in. $179. Not per guest. Not for flowers. For the entire wedding. And here's where the story takes its first surprising turn, because instead of laughing it off, Kelly said something that changed how people heard the story. She said it was the best money they ever spent.
Think about that.
In a culture that tells us love must be proven through expense, that commitment must look impressive, that marriage should begin with financial stress disguised as celebration, Kelly Ripa, a woman who could afford almost anything, looked back and said she wouldn't change a thing.
Why?
Because that $179 wedding didn't begin with debt. It didn't begin with pressure. It didn't begin with expectations they couldn't meet. It began with a promise. And here's the quiet cliffhanger hiding underneath that revelation. What if the secret to lasting love isn't how much you spend, but how little you need? As their lives moved forward, that choice echoed in ways no one could have predicted. They went back to work. They built careers brick by brick. They learned how to argue, forgive, compromise, and grow without the shadow of a lavish wedding hanging over them like a receipt. There was no, "we spent too much to fail." No, we owe everyone a perfect marriage. Just two people learning how to stay. And when fame eventually arrived, when Kelly became the face millions welcomed into their homes every morning, something remarkable happened. They stayed grounded. Mark didn't become a footnote. Kelly didn't become unreachable. Their marriage didn't become a brand. It stayed a partnership. And that's where the $179 wedding quietly reveals its deeper meaning. Because when Kelly finally shared that number publicly, it wasn't a flex. It was a reflection. She wasn't saying, "Look how cheap we were." She was saying, "Look how little we needed." And for an audience who has lived through decades of changing values, who remembers when weddings were simpler, marriages were quieter, and commitment wasn't a performance, that message landed like a homecoming. But here's the part that makes this story linger. Kelly admitted that at the time, she felt a little embarrassed about the wedding. Not ashamed, but aware. Aware that it didn't fit the fairy tale people expected. Aware that someday, others might judge it. And yet, that wedding outlasted countless million-dollar ceremonies. Outlasted trends. Outlasted scandals. Outlasted the noise. Which leads us to a question worth sitting with. What actually lasts? The dress or the devotion? The venue or the vows? The price tag or the promise? Because the truth hiding inside Kelly Ripa and Mark Consuelos' wedding isn't really about money at all. It's about clarity. They knew what mattered. They ignored what didn't. And they chose each other without waiting for permission. And just when you think that's the end of the story, just when it feels like a neat, inspiring bow, there's one final twist that makes this revelation even more powerful. Years later, when Kelly reflected on that day, she said something quietly profound. She said that if they had waited until they could afford the perfect wedding, they might never have gotten married at all. Let that land. Because how many dreams get delayed waiting for perfection? How many loves get postponed waiting for readiness? How many moments pass because we're waiting for a sign that never comes? Kelly and Mark didn't wait. They acted. And decades later, their $179 wedding stands as proof that sometimes the smallest beginnings carry the longest echoes. So the next time you hear about celebrity excess, the next time a headline boasts about $1 million ceremony, remember this story.